Hello, I'm Wendy. Today I'm painting trees in blossom. It's a loose watercolour tutorial with easy masking fluid techniques. It's that time of year when we're all seeing these lovely trees in blossom. There's cherries and apple trees at the moment, and you're wondering maybe how the heck do I paint that in watercolour? I mean, it would be easier in acrylic or oils. You could just dab the little petals on. I think the best way is to use masking fluid, and it really is quite easy to get the character of these trees quite quickly, as long as you don't want to render everything in an awful lot of detail. The demonstration that I'll be doing here, well, the tutorial, is a very loose way of painting these trees, and as I said, I'm hoping that you will find it fairly straightforward and that you retain the character of the trees. I'm just going to do one painting of one single tree, and then I'll show you how to put this picture into more of a finished painting. You can see here the sketch that I used, and it is downloadable with a link in the description box. You can just about discern the main branching structure of the tree on the photograph, and on your drawing just put on the main branches that you see and make sure that you do pencil in the outline of the tree as a whole. If you follow my channel, you know that I like this Pebeo masking gum, which is really nice to use and I would recommend it. It's very fluid and it goes on very easily. I wash the brush in between putting the masking fluid on. I wash it off in a very dilute solution of soapy water just to protect the brush. I do have a video explaining how to use masking fluid, and I'll put the link in the description box below. I'm going to speed the next bit up as it's quite repetitive. You'll be able to see that I'm dotting the masking fluid on and joining up the dots, if you like, in the middle of the tree, and then gradually separating them along the outside branches. You can be as careful as you want here. Some people may want to take a longer time and, as I said, be a bit more, make your marks a little bit more considered. It's entirely up to you and your style of painting. I do tend to paint quite loosely, so some of my marks are a little bit haphazard and I'm working quite quickly. I would recommend for this using a masking fluid that's tinted. This Pebeo is quite nice, it's a nice grey. Some of you might have the Winsor and Newton, which I think it comes in a cream, which you can see, and I know there are some that are tinted a darker blue. You may want to put a few stray dots at the end of each branch just to suggest a little bit of movement in there. I'm using a tube green for a change for my mixing today, and the green I'm using is Hooker's Green Dark. On its own it's quite an artificial looking colour, but it's a really good mixer, and I've mixed it with a cadmium yellow. You could use light or the regular cadmium yellow, so I mixed it with the cadmium yellow, and for the darker greens I put a little bit of burnt sienna in there. Once the masking fluid is dry, then damp the paper around the tree and drop in some cobalt blue. Make it a little bit busy, the sky, as if there's some clouds in there. You've not got to be too tidy with this, but do make sure that you cover the paper. It's always a good idea too to put some darker tones around the areas of blossom that are going to be standing out against the sky, so that you can get the contrast of the white blossom and the blue of the sky. I put on a lighter wash towards the base of the tree. But at this stage, try and keep everything the same wetness. Even though the wash is lighter, put quite a bit of water on. You're going to want everything here in this area to be the same wetness. This is because you're going to be putting some distant trees behind this blossom tree, and they're going to be going in wet into wet. So you do want this whole area to be, as I said, of an equal wetness. At this stage I dropped in a little bit of yellow here. It was in my mind to have some yellow showing through to stand for daffodils or something under the tree, but in the end I thought it was going to be too fussy, so I actually put some green over that. So you can skip this stage if you like. My next stage was to put in the suggestion of these distant trees behind the blossom tree. Now it's up to you where you put this. You could leave, and I think it might be a nice idea to leave a little bit more of the blossom showing against the blue sky. The whole tree has not got to be covered with the green. I think that makes a nice composition. You can see I've got plenty of paint mixed up, and this is just for the first stage. I'll be mixing a darker mix to put in there as well. A lot of people are having difficulty in getting some of the darks in watercolour. This is not going to be terribly dark tones here, but I have mentioned it before, but as a tip, when you're putting on colours like this and you want them to be mid-tone or a dark, then don't spread the paint around because you're diluting it into that underwash. What you want to do is load your brush, do a little area, then go back to your paint, load the brush and do another little area. That's the only way you're going to be able to get darks in watercolour. And of course you do have to mix the paint a lot darker than you think because your watercolour will dry back approximately 30 to 40%. Here's the darker green going in here. So this has got some burnt sienna in here with the hooker's green and the yellow, and it gives you quite a nice dark. So again, keep going back to your colour and dropping these darks in, and you'll find that you will be more successful in getting your darks and your mid-tones in there. I suggest also, particularly if you work quite slowly, is to get this dark tone mixed up, ready to go in before the first coat dries. I like this mask away rubber. There's a link in the description box to this to get rid of the masking fluid. I think sometimes when you use your finger you can pick up some of the paint and rub it onto the white area. This particular rubber seems to be pretty good at avoiding this. The next stage is putting on the shadows on the blossom. Now just mix up for this a blue and a red. It doesn't really matter what you use, as long as you keep it very dilute. If I remember, I used cobalt with a little bit of maybe cadmium red deep here. I suggest also that you maybe drop a little bit of water in as well to soften some of the edges. And you could vary the colours a little bit, so in some areas you have more of the blue and in some areas you have more of the pink. It doesn't really matter. You just want to get these nice sort of pastel shades, but do leave some of the white as well. I wanted to have a few petals on the grass in the front here and I'd forgotten to mask out. So that's all that I'm doing here. You could do this at the beginning when you mask out your tree. For the foreground, I'm putting on here a wash of the cadmium yellow and just dropping in a tiny bit of green in there. And under the tree I'm putting in a shadow with a slightly darker green, still working rather wet into wet here, or probably wet into damp. And this green is slightly darker, and it's a shadow, is to suggest a shadow of the tree there. And this will anchor the tree in your composition, stop it looking as if it's going to float away. And now we come to painting in the trunk and the branches of the tree. I wanted to have some light on the left-hand side of the trunk, which was why I masked it out initially, and then I put a very light colour on it and a bit of shadow on the right-hand side. Again, just working wet into wet here. I used ultramarine and burnt umber to mix the browns. And as you can see here now, I'm going to start to put the branches on, sort of intertwining, some going over little bits of the blossom and some going in between. You will have noticed that by using the masking fluid and rubbing it off, then you do lose your pencil lines, which was the reason for me saying at the beginning just to do the main structures. And on this particular tree you can only see certain parts of it anyway. So have a good idea of how the tree structure works and the skeleton of the tree when you're painting this, and have a look at your drawing or have a look at the photograph that you're working from, so that you've got a good idea of where these branches are going. I am going to speed the next little bit of the painting up, as again it's a very repetitive process. You'll notice towards the end that I started using a darker tone for the branches. I started using a mid to dark tone, and then, as I said, towards the end, then some places I wanted to change the tone, bring the changes a little bit in the tree, make it a bit more interesting, so I dropped a few more darker tones in there. Couldn't resist a little bit of fence at the bottom of the tree here. I rubbed the masking fluid off under the tree and then just put a little bit of green shadow under the little white spaces that were left to suggest flowers and petals that had fallen onto the grass. So generally this is how I would tackle a blossom tree, and I hope it inspires you to find your own blossom trees and to use these techniques to help you paint them, because they are tricky. As I said at the beginning of the video, in watercolour it's very difficult getting these masses of white petals and flowers. Here's a painting of the same tree that I did, in its environment, if you like, in its surroundings, and there were yellow flowers underneath and the ivy covered trees and the distant trees. I quite like this picture, and I hope it gives you some idea of how you can put these techniques that I've been showing you today to use. If you would like to share any of your pictures that you've painted that are inspired by my videos, then I have a Facebook group set up, and there is a link to it in the description box below. And subscribe to my channel if you don't want to miss any future content. Bye for now.